Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horror Mine, where we talk about mysteries, thrillers, and horror movies. My name is Vic Shy, and this week, my friends, we're going over the newly released film in the Halloween franchise, Halloween Kills. This movie picks up right after the events of 2018's Halloween, with Michael Myers having survived the fire intended to kill him by Laurie Strode. Michael continues his Halloween night massacre in brutal and bloody fashion. However, this time, the citizens of Haddonfield band together to hunt down and kill the boogeyman once and for all. I'll be explaining the events that take place throughout the film, as well as that shocking ending and what it means for Halloween Ends, scheduled to be released this time next year. Keep in mind that I'll be discussing my opinions and interpretations of the film, which may heavily differ from yours, and I'd love to discuss your thoughts on the film in the comments down below. This video will contain spoilers for Halloween Kills, which is currently playing in theaters and streaming on Peacock. If you enjoy this video, make sure to click the like button, as it really helps the channel and I would truly appreciate it. But without further ado, sit back and relax and join me as we explore this bloody tale of pure evil in Halloween Kills. Our movie begins with Cameron, who's coming fresh off of cheating on Allison and trying to call his best friend Oscar, who unbeknownst to him is now a Halloween decoration for someone's front yard. He discovers the body of Deputy Frank Hawkins, who is still alive after being stabbed in the neck by discount Dr. Loomis in the previous film. We see a flashback from Halloween night 1978, which shows what took place immediately after the events of the original Halloween. This entire sequence is filmed to look and feel identical to the 1978 film, right down to Michael Myers' original look, which I thought was very cool. A young Deputy Hawkins and his partner go looking for Michael at his childhood home and come across the dead dog previously found by Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Brackett that was never actually shown. Michael gets the upper hand on the conveniently distracted deputy and begins choking him with a rope. Frank fires a shot from his revolver, which is deflected by Michael Myers' plot armor and lands right into his partner's neck. Dr. Loomis arrives at the residence and Michael Myers is taken into custody. Back in the present day, we are introduced to several characters played by their original actors from the original film. Tommy Doyle, who was babysat by Laurie, Lindsay Wallace babysat by Annie Brackett, and Marion Chambers, the nurse who was carjacked by Michael the night he escaped. Lonnie Elam, Cameron's father, and who bullied Tommy as a kid, also makes a return, but is portrayed by a different actor. They get together at a bar each Halloween to support one another through the trauma that they and the entire town of Haddonfield experienced. We see that the events that took place in 1978 still haunt the citizens of Haddonfield. Michael Myers has left a black mark that still looms over the town and its residents to this day.
We will never succumb to fear.
This is for you, Laurie.
We then see the injured Laurie Strode, accompanied by Karen and Allison, being driven away from Laurie's burning house right after the events of the previous film. Several fire trucks are seen heading toward her burning house, and Laurie yells at them to let it burn. Yeah, I don't think that's in their job description, Laurie. While attempting to extinguish the fire, Michael Myers emerges from the burning house looking menacing as hell. To their credit, the firefighters immediately try to put up a fight, but are all brutally murdered. Laurie is rushed to the hospital and immediately goes into surgery for the stab wound she sustained. Former Sheriff Brackett, Annie's father, is now working as a security guard for the hospital. Allison and Karen embrace each other and are mourning the loss of Ray, Karen's husband, who was killed by Michael. Speaking of Michael, he viciously murders a poor old couple who were just trying to enjoy their Halloween night and fly their drone. If we take a look at his hand, we can see that Michael did a pretty good job patching it up. Back at the bar, we meet married couple Marcus and Vanessa, who introduce themselves to Tommy. A news broadcast reveals the murder spree that took place and that they were all unaware of. We see the little boy Julian recounting his babysitter's murder and that Michael Myers and another patient from the transport bus are still at large. Tommy is certain that Michael is responsible, and Vanessa believes that he is inside her car. Tommy grabs a bat named Old Huckleberry off the wall, and he isn't letting anyone smash his pumpkin this Halloween. He confronts the person inside, who proceeds to drive off and immediately crashes the car. Unbeknownst to them, it was actually the other patient from the transport bus. Vanessa opens up a white umbrella, just like the one the patient was holding in the very first scene of the previous film. Now living in the old Myers house is a couple that literally call themselves Big John and Little John. They get pranked by a couple of kids, one of them wearing a skeleton silver shamrock mask from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. We also see the witch and pumpkin mask in a later scene. Back in the hospital, Allison sees the injured Deputy Hawkins as well as the dead body of Dr. Sartain. She and Karen recount their encounter with Michael Myers to the police and are told that he is still alive.
Michael Myers is alive.
Cameron shows up at the hospital and tells them that Tommy Doyle and his dad are gathering a group of people to hunt down and kill Michael for good. Karen believes Michael is after Laurie and on his way to the hospital. She believes that they should stay at the hospital to protect Laurie, but Allison joins Tommy against her wish.
Tonight we hunt him down.
Tommy recruits a large number of citizens who then split up in groups to go search for Michael. Lindsay teams up with Marion, Vanessa, and Marcus, who was handed a freaking Desert Eagle for some reason.
Never fired a gun before.
Alright, so I don't even know why they gave you a gun.
You probably should have said something about that before. Marion says that initially no one took Dr. Loomis seriously about how dangerous and evil Michael was, which is interesting to see as she was the very first character to try and humanize Michael in the original film. They come across Michael at a playground and it pretty much goes exactly like you'd expect. Michael climbs on top of the car just like he did in the original and proceeds to stab Marion and Marcus to death. Vanessa manages to climb out of the car window and doesn't begin shooting at Michael until after he's murdered her husband, which leads to this. Lindsay smacks Michael's head a couple times with a trick-or-treat bag filled with rocks and almost takes off his mask. He throws her to the ground in response, which allows her to take off running. As seen in the original film, taking off Michael's mask seems to briefly incapacitate him, which would explain his urgency to keep it on. Halfway into the film, Laurie finally wakes up in the hospital believing that she has defeated Michael Myers. Not wanting to burst her bubble of joy, Karen doesn't tell Laurie that Michael is still alive. Deputy Hawkins is brought into Laurie's hospital room and the two share a sweet moment where it is revealed that they both had feelings for each other. Laurie's trauma from Michael caused her to shut herself off from the world and the love flower never blossomed. I really enjoyed these small moments between characters talking about their history, which really helped with the world building. They reference Ben Tramer, who was supposed to go to a high school dance with Laurie after Halloween. Lonnie also talks about the times he got high with Allison's dad, which was mentioned during a dinner in the previous film. Lindsay is discovered by Tommy and brought to the hospital, where it is total chaos from citizens freaking out and looking for their family members. Sheriff Barker does his best to control the situation, but Tommy incites the crowd who are all fueled by their fear and hatred towards Michael Myers. Tommy vows to Laurie that he is going to kill Michael and protect her, just like she did for him 40 years ago. Even though she is recovering from surgery, Laurie refuses to stand by while Michael is roaming free.
Do you even know what that is?
It's a stim shot, and they apparently work just as advertised. The other escaped patient arrives at the hospital seeking help but is tragically mistaken for Michael Myers himself by Tommy and the enraged mob, who all blindly begin chasing after him. Laurie and Karen attempt to tell them that they are chasing the wrong person, but their attempts are futile. Laurie's wounds open back up in the chaos and she is forced to retreat back to her hospital room. All hell has broken loose and Sheriff Barker and his deputies are unable to defuse the chaos. Laurie blames herself, believing that Michael's influence on Haddonfield is her fault. Deputy Hawkins reveals to Laurie that on the night Michael was captured, he stopped Dr. Loomis from shooting him in the back of the head. This is something that he briefly hinted at in a conversation with Dr. Sartain in the previous film.
I'm not going to stand in the way of justice this time. Remember, he's property of the state. He mustn't be harmed.
Despite all he had done, he still viewed Michael as a human being, but now realizes that Michael is pure evil. Despite Karen's attempt to protect him, the mob surround the terrified patient, who tragically jumps out of the window to a gruesome death. The fear and hatred that turned the citizens into a mob caused the death of an innocent man.
Now he's turning us into monsters.
Michael returns to his childhood home and unfortunately kills Big John and Little John. Laurie believes that Michael is still coming after her, but Deputy Hawkins states that he never truly was. He reveals that it was Dr. Sartain who initially led Michael to Laurie's compound. Sartain was obsessed with finding out what drove and motivated Michael to kill. He believed that Michael's pursuit of Laurie kept him alive and vice versa. It is my belief that Michael's encounters with Laurie have been strictly predatorial in nature as opposed most to emotionally driven. There are only 3 things that seem to elicit an emotional response from Michael: his mask, his childhood home, and his sister Judith Myers. In the original film, the first thing Michael does after escaping Smith Grove is head to his childhood home. This is where he first encounters Laurie Strode, who went to the Myers house to drop off a key. Michael then became fixated on Laurie, possibly because she reminded him of Judith. After being shot multiple times by Dr. Loomis, he again retreats to his childhood home before being captured. In 2018's Halloween, Michael doesn't come into contact with Laurie until he is prompted to do so by Dr. Sartain. In this film, instead of going after Laurie at the hospital like he did in Halloween 2, he heads straight for his childhood home. As Hawkins states, Michael is still the 6-year-old kid that murdered his sister in the body of a man and is driven purely by animal and predatorial instinct. However, for Laurie, everything about her encounter with Michael Myers became personal. This trauma would shape the way she would live out the rest of her life, with fear and hatred, which has now spread to the rest of the citizens of Haddonfield. Lonnie, Allison, and Cameron arrive at the Myers house, but Lonnie decides that he's going to enter into a solos match. It goes just like we all expected, and Cameron finds his father's dead body neatly stuffed into the attic before being attacked by Michael. Allison believes that a shotgun only works if it's exactly 2 inches away from the target and gets it slapped out of her hands. She surprisingly gets a few good stabs in before being thrown down the flight of stairs and breaks her knee. Michael then mercilessly kills Cameron before focusing his attention to Allison. He is then suddenly stabbed from behind with a pitchfork by Karen, who then stomps on his head. Instead of going for the final blow, she takes off his mask and uses it as bait to lure him into an ambush. Michael is now surrounded by the mob, and security officer Brackett delivers his famous line from the original film.
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
As the awesome beat drops, Michael puts on his mask and prepares for an all-out brawl. He gets beat, stabbed, and shot several times, taking about as much damage as the sandbag from Super Smash Bros. Karen delivers the final blow by stabbing Michael straight through the back of his plot armor. In the hospital, Laurie tells Hawkins that Michael is no human, as he is impossible to defeat with brute force. She says that the more he kills, the more he transcends into an unkillable and immortal being. She proceeds to jinx everybody, as Michael suddenly gets up and mows down the entire mob. He then bashes Tommy Doyle's head in with Old Huckleberry. Back at the Myers house, Karen briefly sees the image of young Michael Myers in his original Halloween clown outfit, staring out of his sister's bedroom window. Karen goes to look out of the window, possibly hoping to gain some type of insight on Michael. He suddenly appears right behind her and stabs her to death exactly 9 times, just like he did his sister. In the film's final scene, Karen's lifeless and bloody body lies on the ground as Michael looks at his own reflection in the window. Laurie can be seen with an intense look on her face, possibly sensing that something is terribly wrong. The final shot of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode sets them on an irreversible path for their final showdown as the movie ends. So what does the ending mean for Michael Myers and Laurie Strode heading into Halloween Ends? The ending establishes that Michael Myers is without a doubt a supernatural entity. No normal human being could have taken the amount of damage and abuse that Michael has and live. The film attempts to explain this with its own reasoning that Michael is simply not human and is the embodiment of evil itself. The more he kills, the more he transcends into supernatural immortal territory. That would also appear to be the film's sole justification as to how he reappeared inside of his house, without being noticed by the dozens of people outside. Either that or Harry must have left his cloak of invisibility laying around. As silly as that may sound to some viewers, this is something that was introduced in the original film. Michael was shot multiple times by Dr. Loomis, lived, and somehow managed to disappear within seconds of falling off the balcony. As for Michael's motives, the film attempts to establish Michael as being the 6-year-old kid that murdered his sister in the body of a man who is driven purely by animal and predatorial instinct. It was never personal for Michael, as he never intentionally set out to hunt for Laurie Strode. As I previously mentioned, there are only 3 things that seem to get an emotional response from Michael: his mask, his childhood home, and his sister, Judith Myers. All 3 of which were utilized by Karen to lure Michael into the ambush. She compared herself to Judith Myers, took off his mask, and then returned to his childhood home. These were the events that led directly directly to her death, as Michael probably envisioned killing Judith as he was stabbing Karen, which is supported by the fact that they were both stabbed exactly 9 times. And yes, I counted. But being that he actually murdered Laurie's daughter, we will get to see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object when Halloween Ends releases this time next year. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Halloween Kills. I honestly have very mixed feelings about this film. While the film succeeded on delivering the bloody kills and action we've come to expect from a Halloween film, I feel that it was bogged down by a huge amount of dumb character decisions from the very beginning of the film right up to its ending. While I don't expect any one character to be perfect, it just felt like most of the dumb character choices were made for the sole purpose of sacrificing bodies to Michael. Laurie Strode was obviously sidelined through most of the film to give her a more realistic break in action in preparation for her final showdown with Myers in Halloween Ends. While the film does suffer from being the middle child in a trilogy, it was still a great time at the movie theater and does a good job in setting up what will undeniably be an epic and bloody conclusion to this modern Halloween trilogy. With all this in mind, I highly recommend you check out Halloween Kills for yourselves and form your own opinion. But as always, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe for weekly Ending Explained videos. Thank you all for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see y'all right back here in the Horror Mine. Y'all stick around.